In section 2 of chapter 20, we'll be looking at immunity, the defense mechanisms of the body. The definition there you can see for immunity, the ability to resist damage from foreign substances. Now, foreign substances could be microorganisms. That's what we normally think of as far as the immune system, like bacteria or virus-infected cells, or it could be toxins or poisons or other types of harmful chemicals. And you really talk about immunity thinking of what are called your first, second, and third line of defense. Your first line of defense really is your cutaneous and mucous membranes, your skin. Your cutaneous membrane would be your skin. And then your mucous membranes are associated with openings in the body, such as your digestive tract openings, your respiratory tract openings. That's where you're going to find mucous membranes. So those are part of your defense mechanisms. And then what we'll spend more of our time talking about really is the second line and the third line of defense. The second line is what's called the innate immunity, and the third line is the adaptive. So let's look at those two. First of all, innate immunity is also called nonspecific, and your book kind of divides it out into three main categories. Number one is surface barriers. This is what's on the outside of the body, outside the skin, to try to prevent any type of microbe or microorganism from getting inside the body. Number two, you have chemicals inside the body, and these chemicals do several things to try to protect the body, including promoting the process of phagocytosis, helping the phagocytes to try to recognize and try to engulf and digest a foreign cell, and then the process of inflammation. We'll talk about that. And then you have certain cells that are part of your innate immunity. These are non-specific type cells, phagocytes, macrophages, and then they produce chemicals that also aid in your non-specific immune system. Now, the word innate there means you're born with it. So these are all things that you're born with. You don't have to adapt to a particular microbe or microorganism in order to have these. You're naturally born with these types of innate immune system barriers, chemicals, and cells. Now, for the adaptive part of the immune system, or the specific part, this is something that is specific, and it is something that you adapt to along the way. You adapt based on exposure to a particular, what we'll define later as an antigen. A couple of things about the adaptive immune system. One is that it is specific. In other words, it has ability to recognize a particular substance, a particular microbe, maybe a bacteria or a virus-infected cell or a toxin. It can recognize it, and then it can respond to it. And then it has ability to develop a memory to that particular substance, so that the next time you're exposed to that same substance, that same microbe or that same virus strain, then you can respond in a faster way. And so this is different than your innate immune system, because your innate doesn't have specific reactions and it doesn't have memory-based type reactions. And then your specific immunity or your adaptive immunity is separated into what's called cell-mediated and antibody-mediated immunity. We'll look at those a little later in the chapter. So let's return back to innate immunity and kind of go through those three characteristics we mentioned. First of all, surface barriers, anything on the surface of the skin that helps to prevent microbes from entering in. And so, of course, that's your skin, your integument, and then any mucous membranes, like we mentioned before. It could even be cilia, even though they're not on the surface of the skin, they are in your respiratory tract. And these cilia, these hair-like structures, help to move particles up and out of the respiratory tract. Things like your sebaceous glands or your oil glands, they produce sebum that produces like an acidic type of coating for the skin, and it has some antimicrobial action as well. Your cells that are part of your innate immunity, that was the second thing we mentioned earlier. And these are some of the cells that are non-specific, such as your neutrophils. We talked about this in a previous chapter. These are phagocytic. They're usually the first white blood cells on the scene to try to get rid of an infection. Macrophages, these are also non-specific. These are phagocytic cells. Eosinophils, these are the type of white blood cells we mentioned before that have a way to get rid of parasites usually worm-type parasites. And then something called a dendritic cell. You may remember this from 168, a dendritic cell. We'll talk more about these a little later as well. It's a type of what's called an antigen-presenting cell. That's the APC abbreviation that I have on the slide. APC is an antigen-presenting cell, and what they do is they help to activate your T cells and your B cells. Basophils and mast cells, these are also cells of your innate immunity, and these help to initiate the inflammatory response whenever they become activated, and that also helps in your immune system. We'll talk about inflammation a little bit later on. And then natural killer cells. This is a type of lymphocyte. It's still an innate immune cell, still nonspecific, and so but these particular ones have the ability, these cells here have the ability to kill, break down tumor cells, and then some virus-infected cells. So all these different cells help in your nonspecific type defense mechanisms. So we've got surface barriers, we've got different cells, and now we have chemicals that help in your innate immune system. One of the chemicals that you have is called complement. Now, complement is not just a single chemical, it's actually a group of 30 or more actual proteins that help work together to create what's called a MAC complex, a membrane attack complex. And it does some other things we'll mention here, but 30 more proteins kind of working together. They're normally inactivated. They're normally not active in your bloodstream until you need them. And so there's usually a cascade, kind of a chain reaction type of effect whenever there's an infection, there's a problem inside the body. The first protein kind of gets activated, and it stimulates other proteins to become activated that are part of this pathway. That usually forms what's called a MAC complex, a membrane attack complex. What that means is that these proteins form almost like a little circular region on the surface of the invading pathogen. So on the surface of the bacteria, they form like a circular region that punches holes or penetrates that membrane of the bacteria. And if you weaken the cell membrane and the cell wall of the bacteria, then that usually means that your immune system can hopefully fight off that infection a little easier. They work as something called an opsonin. All this means is that they kind of bind together pathogens, the infection or the bacterial cells and the phagocytic type cells, and that helps them to if you can get those phagocytes and the pathogens close together, binding together, then that helps the process of phagocytosis. These complement proteins can also help in the process of inflammation, and they can also help in the process of trying to neutralize viruses or virus-infected cells. So complement is a series of proteins. Another group of chemicals are called cytokines, and there's actually 3 different types of cytokines we'll mention. One is called a tumor necrosis factor. This is a type of chemical that's secreted by macrophages. It was found in certain cells that this type of chemical actually causes tumor cells to die. That's what their name comes from, tumor necrosis factor. But they also found other things. It attracts phagocytes to an area. Phagocytes and phagocytic cells are a very important part of your immune system. And so when you have to have chemicals involved to try to send a signal to these phagocytes so that they can be attracted to the site of the infection. It helps to stimulate the process of phagocytosis, but in the process of doing this, these chemicals kind of give you an achy flu-like symptom. It probably will cause you to run a fever and kind of have a sense of fatigue about you because of these chemicals. Another type of chemical that you have is something called an interferon. This is another type of cytokine, and it mainly tends to help prevent the process of viral replication. So in the diagram, you see a cell here on the left that has been infected with some kind of virus. Once a virus infects a cell, it starts to make more virus particles, and eventually the virus gets released and tries to find another cell to infect. But in the meantime, this cell has turned on a gene in the DNA of the cell called an interferon gene that produces this chemical called interferon. It gets secreted like a paracrine or an autocrine type chemical. It gets secreted out of the cell, and neighboring cells can have a receptor for this interferon. that signals the nearby cells to start making antiviral proteins. These antiviral proteins should be able to attack and block the virus reproduction and replication processes. So an interferon is a very helpful chemical in the fight against viruses. Now, third type of cytokine is something called an interleukin. The prefix inter here means between, and leukin refers to leukocytes, white blood cells. And so these chemicals are made by white blood cells, and they're used to stimulate additional white blood cells to try to ramp up the process of your immune defense. So, for example, neutrophils are examples of some white blood cells that will produce interleukins. Whenever the neutrophils detect some kind of bacteria or virus particle, then it can secrete the interleukins, and that will help to activate nearby T cells so that they can start recognizing the problem and they can start to help fight off the infection. Now let's look at the inflammatory response. There's really two different types of inflammation. We'll talk about this, basically where they're located, but the inflammatory response is a response initiated by various types of chemicals, and they have several different effects. One effect is called vasodilation. It just means that the vessels, expand and dilate. That allows more blood flow to the area of the infection. So that's part of inflammation, is to get the blood flow there to try to fix and repair the problem. You also have increased vascular permeability. That means your vessels become more permeable so that the plasma inside of it carrying, the white blood cells can actually move out of the white blood cells. The white blood cells can move out of the vessels a little easier so that the white blood cells and the helping type cells can get into the tissue where the problem may be. It does usually cause some kind of pain associated with it, and it does usually have chemotaxis as a way to help attract white blood cells. So chemotaxis is a special type. We've talked about this in chapter 19 on the blood, is that chemotaxis allows for white blood cells to be attracted to a particular damaged cell or infection in the body. Two main types we'll look at: localized inflammation. This is really what it sounds like. It's where inflammation is confined to a particular area of the body. Maybe you've twisted an ankle, or you've got a knee injury or something, and you've got swelling in that particular area. That's localized inflammation, one specific area of the body. And there's five common symptoms that you'll see: redness, heat, swelling, pain, and if the pain is severe and if the swelling is severe, maybe even loss of function for that particular area. The redness there is because you've got extra blood flow, and the heat as well. You've got extra blood flow to that area. You had vasodilation that creates a redness and warmth to the area. The swelling or edema is there. Again, that's your increased vascular permeability. And if you have a lot of swelling in the area, then again, like I said, you may have pain and maybe even loss of function. You may not be able to move that particular limb or something as easily because of the pain. Systemic inflammation means the inflammation reactions are happening kind of system-wide. There are multiple systems of the body, many places in the body. Some of the things that you'll see with a systemic type inflammatory reaction is that you have lots of white blood cells coming into that area, especially neutrophils kind of coming to that area. You usually have some kind of fever associated with it. Now, the fever is due to the production of chemicals called pyrogens by different cells that get damaged or cells that detect the infection. They're going to start producing pyrogens. These pyrogens tell the temperature control center of the body, the hypothalamus, to increase the body's temperature. And that tries to, increasing your temperature helps your metabolism speed up a little bit. That helps basically try to speed up what the immune system is trying to do. And then again, you'll have, instead of localized vascular permeability, but you'll have widespread vascular permeability. So you may have swelling in multiple places. And that's because of some of the chemicals called histamines that get released from those mast cells and the basophil cells.